Vincent Hayes pushed his yellow cleaning cart down the long hallway of the Grand Arts Theater. The wheels squeaked with every step. He'd been meaning to oil them for weeks now, but somehow never got around to it. That was his life lately. Always meaning to do things, always putting them off. It was 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The theater was empty and quiet. Vincent liked it this way. No people rushing past him. No one telling him to hurry up or clean a different section first. Just him, his mop, and the smell of lemon floor cleaner. He'd been working here for 12 years now. 12 years of mopping floors, emptying trash cans, and scrubbing toilets. Some people might think that's depressing, but Vincent didn't mind the work itself. It was honest. It paid the bills, kept a roof over his family's head. What bothered him was being invisible. Every day, hundreds of people walked through these halls. Wealthy folks in fancy clothes coming to watch opera and ballet. Performers with perfect hair and expensive shoes. Theater staff rushing around with clipboards and headsets, and not one of them really saw him. They saw the mop. They saw the uniform. They stepped around him like he was a piece of furniture. Sometimes they'd glance at him with that quick, uncomfortable look people give to service workers. Then they'd look away fast, like making eye contact might obligate them to something. Vincent was 52 years old. His back hurt most days. His hands were rough and dry from years of chemicals and hot water. He had gray in his beard that hadn't been there when he started this job. Time was moving forward whether he liked it or not. He parked his cart near the main auditorium doors. Through the small window he could see rows and rows of red velvet seats, the stage with its heavy curtains, the golden decorations on the walls that probably cost more than his car. This room was the heart of the building. This was where magic happened, or so people said. Vincent had seen hundreds of performances over the years, though never as an audience member. He'd seen them while cleaning up spilled drinks, while replacing trash bags, while the performers practiced. He'd heard every famous singer who'd come through this theater. Not because he bought a ticket, because he was there in the background, doing his job while they did theirs. Vincent pulled out his mop and bucket. He started on the lobby floor, working in smooth, practiced movements. His mind wandered while his hands worked. That's what happens when you do the same job for 12 years. Your body knows what to do without thinking about it. His thoughts drifted to a place they often went, a place he tried not to visit too much because it made his chest feel tight. He used to sing, not professionally, nothing like that, but he used to sing all the time. In the church choir back in his 20s, at family gatherings, in the car. He had a voice that people noticed, not a trained voice but a strong one, a voice that felt good coming out of his chest like it belonged there. You should do something with that voice, people used to tell him. You could be on stage. He'd smile and shrug it off. But deep down there was a tiny spark of possibility. Maybe he could. Maybe someday. Then life happened the way it does. His girlfriend got pregnant when he was 21. They got married quick, had the baby, then another one. Suddenly there were diapers to buy and rent to pay. His dreams of music school or voice lessons or whatever he'd vaguely imagined became stupid fantasies, selfish wishes from a different version of himself. He got a job at a warehouse, then a better job at a factory. Then he got hurt. Nothing serious, but enough that he couldn't do heavy lifting anymore. That's when he found this janitor position at the theater. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, surrounded by music every single day, closer to it than he'd ever been, and yet further from it than ever. His youngest daughter was in college now. His oldest had her own family. His wife worked at a grocery store. Together they made enough to get by. Not much left over, but they were okay. Better than okay, really. They were happy most of the time. But there was this small, quiet ache that never quite went away. This feeling of something unfinished, like he'd left a sentence half-written somewhere and couldn't remember where. Vincent finished the lobby and moved to the hallway leading backstage. He could hear voices from one of the rehearsal rooms. The opera company was preparing for their spring season. They'd be here every day for the next few weeks, running through their performances. He recognized the music drifting through the walls. Puccini, one of his favorites. The melody made something shift in his chest. Without thinking, he started humming along quietly as he mopped. Then even quieter, he added words. The Italian words he'd memorized from listening so many times. His voice was rusty. He never sang anymore, not even in the shower. It felt silly at his age, like trying to wear clothes from high school. But right now, in this empty hallway, it felt safe. Nobody could hear him. Nobody would laugh or give him that pitying look that said, "It's too late for you, old man." He let his voice grow a little stronger. Not loud, but fuller. It felt like stretching a muscle he hadn't used in years. Painful and good at the same time. The song was about hope. About not giving up even when everything seems dark. About that moment right before dawn when you've been waiting all night. Vincent closed his eyes as he sang, still pushing the mop back and forth. For just a minute he let himself imagine. What if things had been different? What if he'd been brave enough to try? What if he'd stood on that stage instead of cleaning it? A door opened somewhere down the hall. Vincent stopped singing immediately. His face went hot. He focused hard on the floor, scrubbing an invisible spot. Footsteps passed behind him. Someone from the production crew, probably. They didn't say anything. Didn't even slow down. When the footsteps faded, Vincent let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. That was close. Last thing he needed was people hearing him and making fun of the janitor, who thought he could sing opera. He finished the hallway quickly and moved on to the next section. As he worked, he hummed quietly again, too quietly for anyone to hear. It was enough. It had to be enough. After all, some dreams are just meant to stay dreams. That's what Vincent told himself every single day for the past 20 years. He almost believed it. 3 days passed like any other. Vincent mopped floors, emptied trash, cleaned bathrooms. Same routine he'd followed for 12 years. Nothing special. Nothing different. Except something had changed inside him. That moment in the hallway when he'd let himself sing, really sing, even just for a minute, had opened something up. Like a door he'd kept locked had cracked open just a bit, and now he couldn't quite close it all the way. He found himself humming more often, singing quietly while he worked in empty rooms. It was stupid, probably, dangerous even, but he couldn't help it. Friday evening came around. Vincent's shift usually ended at 3 p.m., but today he'd volunteered to stay late. One of the other janitors called in sick, and they needed someone to clean the main auditorium after rehearsal. The extra money would be nice. But if Vincent was being honest with himself, that wasn't really why he said yes. He wanted to be in that big, beautiful room alone. He wanted to hear how his voice sounded in a space designed for singing. By 7 p.m., the theater was mostly empty. The opera company had finished their rehearsal and gone home. A few office staff were still upstairs, but they'd be leaving soon. Vincent had checked. He pushed his cart into the auditorium. The house lights were dim, casting long shadows across the rows of seats. On stage, a single work light stood in the center, creating a circle of brightness in the darkness. Vincent started his usual routine, sweeping between the seats, picking up programs and candy wrappers. But his heart was beating faster than normal. He kept glancing at the stage, just once, he thought, just to hear what it sounds like. He left his broom and walked down the center aisle. His work boots made soft thuds on the carpeted floor. When he reached the stage, he stood there for a moment, looking up at it. Thousands of people had performed on this stage, famous singers whose names everyone knew, people who'd trained their whole lives for moments like this. And here was Vincent Hayes, a janitor with a high school diploma and creaky knees, thinking about climbing up there. He almost turned back, almost grabbed his broom and finished his work like a sensible person, but something pulled him forward. Vincent climbed the side steps onto the stage. The old wood creaked under his feet. He walked to the center, near the work light. The auditorium stretched out before him, all those empty seats waiting. His throat felt tight. His hands were shaking a little. This was foolish. He should go back to work, but he'd come this far. Vincent closed his eyes. He thought about the music he'd been hearing in his head all week. That Puccini piece, Nessun Dorma, Nobody Sleeps. It was about a prince who'd win or die trying. About that moment when everything's on the line and you have to be brave. He took a deep breath and he sang. At first, his voice came out rough and uncertain, but then something happened. The acoustics of the room caught his voice and lifted it, carried it, made it bigger and richer than it had ever sounded before. Vincent opened his eyes. He wasn't thinking about being a janitor anymore. Wasn't thinking about his sore back or his empty wallet or any of it. He was just singing, letting the music pour out of him like it had been waiting there for 20 years. The final note echoed through the hall. Vincent stood there breathing hard, his heart pounding. For a moment he felt alive in a way he hadn't in decades. Then he heard it. A laugh. Not a big laugh. just a small snort of amusement from somewhere in the darkness of the auditorium. Vincent's blood went cold. The house lights came on suddenly, bright and harsh. Vincent squinted against them. 3 people stood near the back of the auditorium. 2 young women and a man, all wearing theater staff badges. One of the women was holding up her phone. She'd been recording him. Vincent's stomach dropped like a stone. "Oh my God," the woman with the phone said, not even trying to be quiet. "Did you guys see that? The janitor thinks he's an opera singer." The other 2 laughed. Not mean laughs exactly. More like the kind of laugh you give when you see a kid trying to dunk a basketball and missing by 3 feet. Amused. A little condescending. Like watching something cute but ridiculous. Vincent couldn't move. Couldn't speak. He just stood there under the bright lights, feeling more exposed than he'd ever felt in his life. "That's actually kind of sweet," the man said. "He must really love opera. Should we tell him about YouTube?" The second woman asked. "I bet this would get views. Like Janitor's hidden talent or something." "Please." Vincent finally found his voice. It came out smaller than he wanted. "Please don't. I was just—" But they were already walking away, talking among themselves, the woman still looking at her phone screen. Vincent stood alone on the stage. The work light seemed harsh now instead of magical. The empty auditorium felt like it was judging him. He climbed down quickly, grabbed his cleaning cart, and rushed through the rest of his work. He kept his head down, his face burning with shame. How could he have been so stupid? That night, Vincent barely slept. He kept imagining that video spreading around. People laughing at him. The old janitor who thought he could sing like the professionals. By Monday morning, his fears had come true. When Vincent walked into the staff break room for his morning coffee, the conversation stopped. 6 or 7 people were clustered around a phone. When they saw him, a couple of them tried to hide their smiles. "Morning, Vincent," one of them said, a weird tone in his voice, like he was trying not to laugh. Vincent nodded and poured his coffee with shaking hands. "Hey, Vincent," called out Danny, one of the security guards. "Didn't know you had such talents." A few people giggled. Vincent's face went hot. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, man. The video's all over the staff group chat. You're famous." Someone made an exaggerated opera singing gesture, their mouth wide open, hand on their chest. More laughter. Vincent left his coffee and walked out quickly. Behind him, he heard someone say, "We were just kidding around." But it didn't feel like kidding. All morning, it continued. People he'd worked with for years suddenly looking at him differently. Some with amusement, some with that uncomfortable pity. A few even started humming opera music when he walked past. During lunch, Vincent sat in his usual spot in the basement, a small utility closet he'd turned into a makeshift break area. He unwrapped his sandwich but couldn't eat. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife. "Someone at work showed me a video. Is that you singing? Why didn't you tell me you could sing like that?" Vincent stared at the message. Even his wife was finding out through workplace gossip. He heard footsteps outside the closet, then voices. Did you see Rodriguez's reaction? He was so embarrassed. I mean, good for him for trying, I guess. But opera? That takes like years of training. The artistic director watched it. He said it was charmingly naive. That's theater speak for bless his heart. They walked away, still talking. Vincent sat in the darkness of his closet. His sandwich sat untouched on his lap. His throat felt tight, but not from wanting to sing this time. He'd made a fool of himself. Let himself believe for just a moment that he could be something more than what he was. That was the mistake. Getting above yourself, forgetting your place. Vincent decided right then that he would never sing again, not even alone. The door that had cracked open would stay shut for good this time. He'd learned his lesson. Some dreams, he thought, don't just die quietly. Sometimes they have to be beaten to death by reality first. Sometimes you have to be humiliated before you finally understand that it's too late, that the world has already decided who you are and who you're not. Vincent was a janitor. That's all he was. That's all he'd ever be. He crumpled up his sandwich and threw it away. He had work to do. 2 days passed. Vincent kept his head down and did his work. He stopped humming, stopped letting his mind wander to music. When opera rehearsals echoed through the halls, he tried not to listen. The teasing had mostly stopped. People got bored and moved on to other gossip. But Vincent still felt their look sometimes. Still saw the smirks when he walked past certain groups. It was Wednesday afternoon. Vincent was cleaning the second-floor hallway near the dressing rooms. His cart squeaked along beside him. Same sound it always made. Same routine as always. He heard a door open behind him. "Excuse me." The voice was older, female, with an accent he couldn't quite place. Vincent turned around. A woman stood in the doorway of one of the private dressing rooms. She looked about 60, maybe older. Gray hair pulled back elegantly. She wore simple clothes but carried herself like someone important. Vincent recognized her face from the posters in the lobby. Isabella Chen, one of the most famous opera singers in the world. She was here as a guest performer for the theater's spring gala. "Yes, ma'am?" Vincent said, already moving his cart out of her way. "Sorry if I was blocking the hall." No. You're not in my way." She stepped closer, studying his face. "You're Vincent, yes? The janitor?" His stomach tightened. Here it comes, he thought. Another person wanting to talk about the video. Maybe she thought it was funny too. "Yes, ma'am. That's me." "I watched your video," she said. Vincent's face went hot. "Look, I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have been on stage. I was just fooling around. I know it was unprofessional." "Unprofessional?" She tilted her head. "Why would it be unprofessional to sing?" "Because I'm the janitor. I'm supposed to be cleaning, not pretending I'm something I'm not." Isabella was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Have you ever had voice training?" "No, nothing like that." "You taught yourself?" "Just by listening." Vincent shrugged. "I guess. I used to sing in church when I was younger, but I never took lessons or anything formal." "How long have you been listening to opera?" "My whole life, pretty much. My grandmother used to play records when I was a kid." "I've always loved it." Isabella nodded slowly. She had this intense way of looking at him, like she could see things other people missed. "The people who laughed at you," she said. "They don't understand what they heard." Vincent let out a bitter laugh. "They understood fine. They heard a janitor making a fool of himself." "No." Her voice was firm. "They heard something raw and untrained. But I heard something else. I heard something real." Vincent didn't know what to say to that. "Can I tell you what I heard?" Isabella continued. "I heard a natural tenor voice with genuine emotion. Yes, you need training. Yes, your technique needs work. But you have something that can't be taught. You have feeling, heart. Many trained singers spend years trying to find what you already have." Vincent stared at her. Was she making fun of him? But her face was serious. Sincere. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Let me ask you something. Why did you sing that night? On the stage?" Vincent thought about it. "I wanted to know what it felt like, just once. To sing in a real theater instead of just cleaning it. And how did it feel?" He remembered that moment before the lights came on. Before the laughter, it felt right, like something that should have happened a long time ago. Isabella smiled. "That's what I heard in your voice. Someone singing something that matters to them." Vincent's throat felt tight. He didn't trust himself to speak. "The spring gala is in 3 weeks," Isabella said. "One of our scheduled performers had to cancel. Family emergency. We need someone to fill that slot." Vincent's eyes widened. "You can't be suggesting I want you to perform. That's crazy." "I'm not a performer. I'm a janitor who knows some opera songs. You're a man with a gift that's been buried for too long." Isabella's voice was gentle but insistent. "I'm offering you a chance. One performance. I'll work with you, train you, help you prepare." "Why would you do that?" "You don't even know me." "Because 35 years ago someone did it for me." Isabella's expression changed, became distant with memory. "I was working in a restaurant in San Francisco, washing dishes. My family had no money. I sang while I worked just to pass the time. One night a customer heard me, a retired opera teacher. She offered to train me for free, said I had something worth developing." She focused back on Vincent. "I told her no at first. I was too scared, too convinced that people like me didn't get chances like that. She had to ask me 3 times before I said yes. And that changed your life," Vincent said. "It gave me my life. The real one, the one I was supposed to have." Isabella stepped closer. "I see the same thing in you that my teacher saw in me. Don't let fear steal what could be your moment." Vincent felt something breaking open inside his chest. That door he'd tried so hard to close was pushing open again. "I'm 52 years old," he said. "I have a family, responsibilities. What if I fail? What if I get up there and embarrass myself in front of a whole audience? What if you don't? Isabella challenged. What if you get up there and show everyone, including yourself, what you're really capable of? Vincent looked down at his cleaning cart, at his worn work gloves, at the mop he'd been pushing for 12 years. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. I don't know either, Isabella said honestly. 3 weeks isn't much time. You'll need to work harder than you've ever worked. Every evening after your shift. Every spare moment you have. It won't be easy. And if I'm not good enough, then we'll know you tried. But Vincent, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've heard thousands of voices. I don't waste my time on people without potential. You have something. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out what that something is. Vincent stood there in the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed above him. Somewhere down the hall a rehearsal was starting. He could hear the orchestra tuning. His whole life he'd played it safe. Done what was responsible. Put everyone else first. And that was good. That was the right thing to do. He didn't regret his family or his choices, but standing here now looking at this famous singer who was offering him something impossible, Vincent realized something. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe he wasn't too old. Maybe, just maybe, there was still time for one more dream. Okay, he heard himself say. I'll try. Isabella's face lit up. You mean it? I mean it. But I need to talk to my wife first, and I'll still need to work my regular job. I can't afford to. Of course. We'll work around your schedule. Evening rehearsals. I'll clear it with the theater management. They'll let me do this? After the video and everything? Isabella smiled. Vincent, I'm Isabella Chen. When I tell them I want you to perform, they'll say yes. That's how this business works, Vincent almost laughed. It felt surreal, like he'd fallen into someone else's life. One more thing, Isabella said. Between now and the gala, you will doubt yourself. Many times. You'll want to quit. You'll think this was a stupid idea. When that happens, and it will happen, I want you to remember this moment. Remember why you said yes. Why did I say yes? Vincent asked. Because part of you never stopped singing. Even when you thought you had. Even when you cleaned floors and emptied trash and made yourself invisible. That part was still there waiting. You said yes because you owe it to that part of yourself to see what it can do. Vincent nodded, not trusting his voice. Go home, Isabella said. Talk to your family. Think it over tonight. If you still want to do this, meet me tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Studio B downstairs. Bring comfortable clothes and an open mind. She turned to go back to her dressing room, then paused. Oh, and Vincent? Stop apologizing for taking up space. You belong here just as much as anyone else. She disappeared into the room, closing the door softly behind her. Vincent stood alone in the hallway with his squeaky cart and his dirty mop. But something had shifted. The air felt different. Lighter somehow. He pulled out his phone and texted his wife. Can we talk tonight? Something happened. Something big. Then Vincent finished his shift. But for the first time in 12 years, he wasn't thinking about cleaning. He was thinking about what song to sing. Vincent sat at his kitchen table that evening, hands wrapped around a coffee mug he hadn't touched. His wife Rita stood by the counter, arms crossed, listening. She hadn't said anything yet. Just listened while he explained everything. So this famous opera singer wants you to perform at the gala, Rita finally said. In 3 weeks. I know it sounds insane. It does sound insane. But she wasn't angry. Just processing. Vincent, you haven't sung in front of people in 20 years. I know. And this isn't just people. This is the spring gala. Rich donors, critics, the whole city. I know. Vincent looked up at her. Tell me not to do it. Tell me it's a stupid idea and I'll call her tomorrow and say no. Rita was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. Do you want to do it? She asked, more than anything. And that terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Vincent struggled to find the words. Because what if I'm not good enough? What if everyone was right to laugh? What if I get up there and prove that I'm just a janitor who should have stayed in his lane? Rita reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were rough from years of cashier work, just like his were rough from years of cleaning. You know what I see? She said. I see my husband, who's been going to that theater for 12 years, coming home a little more tired, a little more invisible every day. I see a man who stopped singing, who stopped talking about music, who just went quiet. Her eyes were wet. I thought that part of you was gone, but maybe it was just waiting. You think I should do it? I think you'll regret it forever if you don't try. We'll figure it out. We always do. Vincent felt something release in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he needed her blessing. Their daughter called an hour later. Rita had texted her. She screamed so loud Vincent had to hold the phone away from his ear. Dad! Oh my God, Dad. You're going to sing at the gala? Maybe if I don't chicken out. You better not chicken out.
I'm flying home for this.
Don't you dare back out. It might not be good. I might embarrass myself. Or you might be amazing. Dad, I've heard you sing. When I was little, you used to sing all the time. I remember. You were always good. Vincent's throat got tight. He'd forgotten that his kids remembered those days. The next evening, Vincent showed up at Studio B at exactly 6 p.m. His hands were sweating. His heart hammered in his chest. Isabella was already there, warming up her voice with scales. The room was small, just a piano and some chairs and mirrors on one wall. You came? She said, smiling. Good. I wasn't completely sure you would. I almost didn't, but you did. That's what matters. She gestured to the piano. Let's start simple. We need to understand what we're working with. What followed was the hardest 3 hours Vincent had experienced in years. Isabella made him sing scales. Over and over, made him focus on his breathing, on his posture, on a dozen tiny technical things he'd never thought about. Your voice is pushing from your throat, she kept saying. It needs to come from your diaphragm. From here. She pressed her hand against her stomach. That's where your power lives. Vincent tried. Failed. Tried again. Don't get frustrated, Isabella said. You've been singing wrong for 50 years. We can't fix that in one night. But we can start. By 9 p.m., Vincent's throat hurt. His back hurt. His pride hurt a little too. That's enough for tonight, Isabella said. Same time tomorrow? Vincent nodded, too tired to speak. This became his life. Work all day. Train all evening. Stumble home exhausted. Sleep. Repeat. 3 days in, Vincent wanted to quit. His voice was getting worse, not better. All this technical stuff Isabella kept drilling into him was messing with the natural way he'd always sung. Nothing felt right anymore. I sound terrible, he said after a particularly rough session. I sounded better before we started. You're breaking down old habits, Isabella explained patiently. It always gets worse before it gets better. Trust the process. I don't have time for a process. I have 2.5 weeks. Then we'd better not waste time complaining. Again, from the top. Word spread through the theater. The janitor was actually doing it. Actually training for the gala. Reactions were mixed. Some people thought it was inspiring. Sweet. They'd smile at Vincent in the hallways and tell him good luck. Others thought it was a publicity stunt. Something the theater cooked up for attention. They'd whisper when he walked past. A few thought it was a disaster waiting to happen. Vincent overheard 2 stage managers talking in the break room. It's cruel, honestly, setting him up to fail in front of all those people. I know. Like we all have dreams, but there's a reason most of us don't pursue them. Vincent left his coffee and walked out before they saw him. But the worst was Peter Walsh, the theater's artistic director. He cornered Vincent in the hallway one afternoon. I want you to know I oppose this, he said flatly. Isabella Chen may be a legend, but this is my theater, my gala. And you're risking the reputation we've built. I understand, sir. Do you? Because if you embarrass yourself up there, you embarrass us. The board is already asking questions. They think this is some kind of charity case. Vincent felt his face burn. If you want me to back out, too late for that. Isabella already announced it. She put your name in the program. We're stuck with this now. Peter leaned closer. Just try not to make it worse than it has to be. He walked away, leaving Vincent standing in the empty hallway. That night, Vincent seriously considered quitting. He sat in his car in the parking lot after his training session, too tired to drive home. His voice was raw. His confidence was shattered. In 10 days, he'd be standing on that stage in front of hundreds of people who expected him to fail. His phone rang. His daughter. Hey, Dad, just checking in. How's the training going? Vincent tried to sound upbeat. Good, hard but good. Are you lying to me? He sighed, maybe a little. Want to know what Mom told me? She said she hasn't seen you this alive in years. Even when you come home exhausted, there's something different about you. Different how? Like you have a purpose again. Like you matter. Vincent felt tears prick his eyes. What if I fail? Then you fail. But at least you tried. That's more than most people can say. She paused. I'm proud of you, Dad. Whatever happens. After they hung up, Vincent sat in the dark for a few more minutes. Then he started the car and drove home. The next 10 days blurred together. Isabella worked him harder than he'd ever been worked. But slowly something started clicking. His voice began responding to the training. The technical stuff started feeling natural instead of forced. There, Isabella said one evening, eyes bright. Did you hear that? That's your real voice. That's what we've been looking for. Vincent had heard it too. For just a moment, he'd sounded the way he'd always dreamed of sounding. The theater staff started noticing the change. Even the skeptics had to admit he was improving. 2 days before the gala, they did a full dress rehearsal. Just Vincent, Isabella, and the pianist in the small studio. Vincent sang Nessun Dorma all the way through. No stops, no corrections. When he finished, Isabella had tears in her eyes. That was beautiful, she said quietly. You're ready? But Vincent wasn't sure. His hands were shaking. It sounded okay in here, but the actual stage? With a full audience? You won't know until you try. That's the nature of performance. You prepare as much as you can and then you trust yourself. I don't trust myself. Then trust me. I wouldn't let you do this if I didn't believe you could. The night before the gala, Vincent couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Rita snored softly beside him. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Either he'd prove everyone wrong or he'd prove everyone right. He thought about Peter Walsh's warning, about the people who'd laughed at the video, about his own doubts that whispered in his head constantly, but he also thought about Isabella's faith in him, about his daughter flying home to watch, about Rita's hand holding his across the kitchen table. He thought about that moment on stage when he'd sung alone and felt, for the first time in decades, like himself. Vincent got out of bed and went to the kitchen. He poured a glass of water and looked out the window at the dark street. Tomorrow night he'd stand on that stage. He'd open his mouth and sing. And whatever happened after that, at least he would know he tried. At least he would know he was brave enough to give his dream one more chance. Vincent finished his water, went back to bed, and somehow eventually fell asleep. When he woke up, it was the day of the gala. Vincent arrived at the theater 4 hours before the gala started. He couldn't stay home any longer. Couldn't sit still. Couldn't stop his hands from shaking. The building buzzed with activity. Florists arranging displays. Caterers setting up tables. Staff rushing everywhere with clipboards and headsets. Nobody paid attention to Vincent in his janitor uniform. Why would they? He was invisible. Just part of the background. Except tonight he wouldn't be. He went to the small dressing room Isabella had arranged for him. It wasn't fancy. Just a chair, a mirror, and a rack with the tuxedo the theater had provided. A borrowed tuxedo for the borrowed dream. Vincent sat down and stared at his reflection. The same face he'd seen in mirrors for 52 years. Tired eyes. Gray in his beard. Nothing special. Nothing that looked like it belonged on a stage. A knock on the door made him jump. It's me, Isabella's voice called. Come in. She entered carrying a garment bag and wearing an elegant black gown. Her hair was styled perfectly. She looked like she belonged in this world. How are you feeling? She asked, terrified. Good. That means you care. She hung up the garment bag. I brought you something. A proper tuxedo. The one they gave you doesn't fit right. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Tonight you're a performer. You should look like one. She studied his face. What's really wrong? Beyond normal nerves? Vincent hesitated, then told the truth. I keep thinking about everyone who'll be out there. Peter Walsh, who thinks I'm going to embarrass the theater. The staff members who laughed at me. All those rich people who paid a lot of money to see real talent, not some janitor playing pretend. Stop, Isabella said firmly. Listen to me. I've performed in front of presidents and queens. I've sung at the world's greatest opera houses. And I'm telling you something important. They're not coming to see a janitor or a professional or any label. They're coming to hear a voice. Your voice. That's all that matters. What if I freeze? What if my voice cracks? What if you're wonderful? Isabella interrupted. Vincent, we've worked so hard. You've worked so hard. You're ready. But you have to believe that. She left him alone to change. The tuxedo fit perfectly. When Vincent looked in the mirror now, he almost didn't recognize himself. An hour before the performance, his family arrived. Rita knocked softly and peeked in. She was wearing her nicest dress, the one she saved for special occasions. When she saw Vincent in the tuxedo, her hand went to her mouth. "Oh, honey, you look so handsome," their daughter burst in behind her. "Dad, oh my God, you look amazing." Even his son-in-law was there holding their granddaughter. A whole little cheering section. "We're sitting in the 5th row," his daughter said excitedly. "Close enough to see everything." "Maybe too close," Vincent joked weakly. Rita took both his hands in hers. "Whatever happens tonight, we're proud of you. You know that, right?" Vincent nodded, not trusting his voice. "Okay, we'll let you get ready," Rita said. "We love you." After they left, Vincent sat alone with his thoughts. The building filled with sounds, voices, laughter, the orchestra warming up. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. Another knock. One of the stage managers. 15 minutes, Mr. Hayes. 15 minutes until everything changed. Vincent walked backstage. The other performers were there, stretching, humming, preparing. They all looked so confident, so professional, like they'd done this 1,000 times. Isabella found him in the wings. "Remember what we practiced. Breathe from your diaphragm. Trust your training. And most importantly, feel the music. Let it move through you." "I'm so scared," Vincent whispered. "I know, but fear and excitement feel the same in your body. Maybe you're not scared. Maybe you're just ready." The gala began. Vincent watched from the wings as other performers took their turns. Each one was incredible, polished, perfect. The audience clapped enthusiastically after each piece. Then it was his turn. The announcer's voice boomed through the hall. "And now a very special performance. Please welcome Vincent Hayes." The applause was polite but uncertain. Vincent heard murmurs ripple through the crowd. He knew what they were thinking. The janitor. This should be interesting. He walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. He couldn't see the audience, but he could feel them out there. Hundreds of people, waiting, judging. Vincent found his mark at center stage. His legs felt like water. His throat was dry. Every instinct screamed at him to run. He looked out into the brightness and saw his family in the 5th row. Rita was gripping their daughter's hand. Both of them looked terrified for him. Then Vincent spotted other faces. Danny, the security guard. Some of the cleaning staff who'd gotten dressed up to come. People who knew him as the janitor. And in the back, arms crossed, Peter Walsh, waiting for him to fail. The orchestra began the introduction to Nessun Dorma. Vincent closed his eyes and thought about the past 3 weeks. The late nights. The sore throat. Isabella's endless patience. His wife's faith. His daughter's pride. He thought about 20 years of silence. 20 years of invisible work. 20 years of telling himself it was too late. The moment came. His cue. Vincent opened his mouth and sang. The first note came out clear and strong. Not perfect, but real. He felt it resonate in his chest the way Isabella had taught him. He kept singing. The Italian words he'd memorized so long ago flowed out of him. The melody lifted and soared. He wasn't thinking about technique anymore. Wasn't thinking about the audience or the lights or any of it. He was just singing. Finally, after all these years, the song built toward its famous climax. The moment where the tenor has to hit those powerful high notes. The moment Vincent had practiced 1,000 times in the past 3 weeks. He reached for them. His voice rose, filled the hall, rang out strong and true. Vincerò. Vincerò. I will win. I will win. The final note hung in the air. Vincent held it, putting everything he had into that one sustained sound. All his hope, all his fear, all his years of quiet longing. Then silence. Complete silence. Vincent stood on the stage, breathing hard, suddenly aware of himself again. His heart sank. He'd messed up. He'd failed. Then someone in the audience stood up. Then another. Then another. The applause started like thunder. Vincent opened his eyes. The entire audience was on their feet. Not just polite clapping, but real applause. Some people were wiping their eyes. His wife was crying openly. His daughter was screaming and jumping up and down. The cleaning staff were cheering. Danny was whistling. Even some of the theater staff who'd laughed at him were clapping hard, genuine smiles on their faces. And in the back, Peter Walsh stood with his hands pressed together, nodding slowly. His expression had changed completely. Vincent looked to the wings where Isabella stood. She had tears streaming down her face, mouthing the words, "I told you." The applause went on and on. Vincent took a bow, then another. People were shouting, "Bravo!" The sound washed over him like a wave. He hadn't just done it. He'd really done it. After the performance, people crowded around him. Strangers shaking his hand, asking about his training, telling him he was incredible. Peter Walsh pulled him aside. "I owe you an apology," the director said stiffly. "I was wrong about you. That was really something. Thank you, sir. We should talk about you doing more performances. Regular ones." Vincent just nodded, overwhelmed. But the best moment came later, after most people had left. Vincent found Isabella in the hallway. "Thank you," he said simply, "for seeing something in me I couldn't see. I didn't give you anything you didn't already have. I just helped you find it," she smiled. "What will you do now?" "I don't know. Keep my janitor job probably, but maybe sing more too. If that's possible." "Everything's possible now. You proved that tonight." Vincent drove home with Rita and his daughter. They couldn't stop talking about the performance, about people's reactions, about how amazing it was, but Vincent was quiet. He was thinking about tomorrow, about going back to work with his mop and his squeaky cart, about being the janitor again, except he wouldn't just be the janitor anymore. He'd always be the janitor who sang at the gala, the janitor who had a voice, the janitor who tried. When they got home, Vincent changed out of the tuxedo and hung it carefully in his closet. He'd return it tomorrow, go back to his regular uniform, but something had changed forever. He'd stood on that stage. He'd faced his fear. He'd given his dream one last chance, and his dream had answered back. Vincent went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Through the window he could see the night sky. Stars scattered across the darkness. He thought about the song he'd sung, about winning, about not giving up even when everything seems lost. Vincent smiled to himself in the quiet kitchen. He'd won, not fame or fortune or a new career. He'd won something better. He'd won back the part of himself he thought was gone forever. And tomorrow, when he went back to work, when he pushed that squeaky cart down those familiar halls, he'd do it differently. He'd do it as someone who knew what his voice could do, as someone who'd proven, at least to himself, that it's never really too late. Vincent finished his water and went to bed. For the first time in 20 years, he hummed a little tune as he climbed the stairs, and it sounded beautiful.